Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.arganissima.com. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty. Arganissima, New York.
All right, folks, welcome to the iHealth channel. Welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, with a live Q&A all the way from Australia with the one and the only Dr. Christian Heim. And this is Climb to Your Prime with Dr. Heim. It rhymes.
Thanks, Hurricane. It's great to be here. And what's the time? It's 9. So,
Oh, okay.
It all fits in. Yeah.
Perfect. Time for mental health, right? And
yeah, it's time for mental health.
That's it. Well, we've always said this, physical health is important, mental health just as important. And I think sometimes the mental health is probably more important because it does affect everything else.
Yeah, it does.
So previously we've had Dr. Heim come on, we've had a couple of shows, and last one we had a Q&A live. We had some questions and we kind of tackled a few topics. And of course, Dr. Heim has so much knowledge about this. I mean, that's his specialty. So we do have a few questions, and we did ask people to send us their questions. So we do have a few ones that I think we can hit on right away. So first of all, Doctor, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm well. It's a beautiful sunny winter's day in Queensland, Australia.
It's amazing. You have winter, we're in summer, so hey.
Yep.
What a world, right?
It is an amazing world, actually.
Hey, listen.
If it's functioning well or not.
Well, there's a lot of debate about that one these days, right?
Yeah.
Well, and we can talk about that too in between all our questions here. So while we wait for any additional folks call in, or people just letting us know what's going on, sending in questions in, that would be great. In the meantime, we can get some action going. So first question, I am having a hard time with my anxiety. I hate how I feel. Good, then it's like a switch and I'm in a bad mood. Anything I can do about this?
So one of the problems about anxiety is that it's episodic. There are things that trigger it, and then there are times that you feel calm. And the idea is that during the time that you feel calm, to do some deep breathing and have some positive self-talk. So something that you say to yourself, to saying, okay, things are okay at the moment, things are fine. So that when you're triggered and something triggers your anxiety, you're on top of it. You know what to do. And that is to do some deep breathing and to have some positive self-talk, which sort of goes, okay, I'm in an anxious situation at the moment, but I don't need to be anxious. I can actually breathe through this, and I know that I will be okay. And if you're not sure of that, then at the very least, you can always say to yourself, anxiety is just anxiety. The problem is just a problem. I will get through this. So again, it depends on what your triggers are, but during the times when you're okay, you actually rehearse so that at times you end up in anxiety, you've already got something prepared to do. I can elaborate on that if you want, Hurricane.
Yes, please, Doctor. So I had just the interjection there. So
yeah.
The word anxiety. I know we covered this like in I think the first session that we had. Can we just expand on that? For people that are listening, what is that? How is that even defined? So people can
anxiety.
Yeah, because people may have the same feeling here. So other than the person that asked, yeah.
Okay, so actually, feeling anxiety is normal. We all feel anxious to some extent. So it becomes a problem, a clinical problem, when it's too much. So I'm going to start off with fear, because we all understand fear. if you're walking along and you come across a snake rearing ready to bite you, you are automatically going to feel fear so that your body can do something to save your life. It could be run in the other direction. It could be to just move gently out of the way, but you will be in a hyper-vigilant state, and that happens automatically. It's what we call the fight or flight response, and it's part of the nervous system that is there to save your life. In your brain, there's a place called the amygdala that wants to keep you alive. So this is good. The difference between fear and anxiety is that fear is something real, like a snake, a saber-toothed tiger. But we live in a world now where you don't come across snakes every day. You don't come across saber-toothed tigers every day. You come across deadlines, social embarrassment, expectations, self-imposed rules, the fear of missing out. All these things are actually anxieties because they are more in our head, and it becomes a matter of how we think about those things. And so an anxiety, in a sense, is an imagined fear. But here's the thing, Hurricane, it does the same thing to your brain. It activates your sympathetic nervous system, and your amygdala is conditioned to think, I'm going to die if I embarrass myself in public. The difference is if a saber-toothed tiger mauls you, your chances of dying are pretty high. Your chances of dying of embarrassment in public are really very, very low. And so one of my rules is that anxiety can't kill you. Anxiety is just anxiety. So what do we do? If the sympathetic nervous system is activated, these are times that we're triggered when we know that whatever is making us anxious has made us anxious. And before I was saying that the times that you're calm, when you're not anxious, you practice. You deep breathe in for 3, hold for 3, out for 3, and hold for 3. And you say to yourself things like, anxiety is just anxiety. And so this becomes a rehearsal, just like an actor would rehearse before going on stage, or a pianist would practice before they do a performance. You rehearse these things if you're an anxious person, so that when you're confronted with your anxiety, your brain goes, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then you just deep breathe, and your brain goes, I remember this. This is when we tell ourselves that anxiety is just anxiety. This is when we start to chill. And the thing about deep breathing, Hurricane, is that it's so physical. And it would take me a while to explain, but it activates the opposite of the fight or flight, what we call rest and digest. And your body will actually relax.
Wow. Well, I can visualize actually the concept where you can just, calm yourself down, right?
Yeah.
And just tell yourself that this is not a problem. I can do this. And listen,
Yes.
I personally, sometimes I get the stage fright type of thing when I do presentations, or if I'm going in front of a big audience, and I've done those in trainings and things. And I know a lot of people, even some actors, I know that they might have that before they get into a scene or like a set.
Yes.
And you get your adrenaline kick in, you feel like, oh my God, and nervous, all that stuff is happening. And I'm assuming that is exactly the picture. And then,
Yes.
what I do is I just, I'm going to do me. I'm going to go there. I'm not worried about what people think. I'm going to do. And happened even my first show, literally when I first launched the channel, and I wanted to do the first one. I did it 3 times before actually I went. The first time I was so nervous, not because I couldn't figure it out or I can do it. It's just that, I was mumbling to myself and it didn't work. So it wasn't live. So that was a good news. And then I had to work myself. And then I said, I do this all the time. So what's the difference? I'm just in front of camera. Let me just talk. And I made myself natural to it. And I didn't care if I made a mistake or if I stuttered, whatever. I just went, and focused on my topic. And it went away like the first 2 minutes, and then it was gone. And
Yes.
sometimes I've noticed you can feel it in even your voice. You almost have like a little choke in your discussion. And then all of a sudden that tone is lucid, is very, nice and calm, and it's solid. And that's been my personal experience. So
yeah, and that's actually very, very good, because one of the secrets is, and this comes from research that my spouse does, almost every actor has stage fright or performance anxiety, right? So there are a few things that we can do about that. We can change the language. So instead of saying, I'm nervous, I'm really nervous, you can actually say, I'm excited, I'm really excited about this. Or somebody who goes, oh, I can feel that adrenaline, I can feel that adrenaline, this is dreadful. You can actually say, I can feel that adrenaline, I'm pumped, I'm ready to go. And anxiety doesn't need to be a negative thing. It has this positive component that actually pushes you to perform better. In fact, we have this wonderful graph called the Dodson curve, which shows that the more anxiety you have, the better you'll perform. So in other words, if you've got an exam in front of you, you'll actually study. Now, if it's too much anxiety, all right, that's when things sort of fall down. But you want to keep it on that upward trajectory where I've got just enough anxiety to keep me motivated to doing my best.
Doctor, so I thank you. And I was going to just say, I have one thing, is that I can share what I felt, what I do feel when I do that. And one of the feelings is usually my mind is like, thinking, am I going to be up to the game here? Am I going to be able to deliver? I'm questioning myself before I get in. And so your mind starts playing tricks on you. Like, now you start thinking about your performance, your quality, your dialogue, whatever, the pitch. And then also you start thinking about how people are perceiving you. So I have actually worked some way around that magic. And basically I just blank everybody out. And I focus on one person in front of me, and I notice actually I've done something on the stage where they have enough lights you don't see anybody anyways. Everybody's wiped out in front of you. You just kind of see a bunch of a dark room, and you have lights in front of you. But the more you think about it, the more you react. The more you just like, I'm just gonna do me and go for it.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yes.
And that's been my personal experience. And I just wanted to share what played in my mind when I literally felt those feelings, when I stood up there.
Yeah. And that's actually so important because our minds can play tricks on us and we lose focus and we focus on how we're being judged. Whereas if you find a focus, so let's say you're going for a really important interview and you're going, oh, I'm going to stuff it up, I'm going to say the wrong thing, and you've got all this going. You just focus on something ridiculous and funny. You imagine all the people that are interviewing you wearing a clown nose, right? And if you focus on that, you sort of go, I'm going to do okay because they look pretty dumb. And that focus can keep you focused so that you just crowd out all those other signals that are almost sabotage type signals.
And that's, you're right. I mean, that's exactly how, it felt. It's just that you blank out, or to your point, maybe think about them all just like funny. And that's it. But it works. And I've actually had, a discussion with other people that had the same feeling, and and I think it's the number one, number two fear out there, like, public speaking and standing in front of audience, because people look at you and they stare. Yeah. And you just like, you don't know how you're doing. So sometimes you feel that engagement, you want to feel the engagement, especially if you're just pitching and not interactive. It's harder because, you can't read their faces and you can't read their emotions. And sometimes they're just solid and you get crazy. And that's why if you're interactive with a crowd, you feel much more, in a better place. So
that's right. Exactly right. Yeah.
So doctor, we have another question. I am 27 and I have been struggling with depression since I was a teenager. I keep feeling like I am falling in life. I'm failing in life. I'm sorry. The phone is tiny. I am failing in life. I've had some breakdowns and I just want to give up. I use alcohol to overcome the feeling. What can I do? Yeah.
All right. That's a really tough one because these are the sort of tough feelings that a lot of people, particularly in their 20s, are going through. When you're in your 20s, it's a very interesting time of life because you're just finding a niche, finding where you're supposed to be. And that fear of failing is one actually that we all have to deal with. And this brings me to an idea that anything that we do, we can be judged for, but you can't be judged for who you are, right? So that brings to the idea that you're a human being, you're not a human doing. So part of the answer is to look at how people see you, and you go to the people who love you. You look at how your mum sees you, how your dad sees you. And quite truly, Hurricane, every mum and dad may have expectation, but they always love people if you succeed or fail, because they love you for who you are, not for what you do. Okay, but depression is really difficult. And this person has been suffering depression for over a decade, Hurricane. That's absolutely horrible, and it's really hard. And so people start to despair. So the first thing that I need to tell people is, if you need to see somebody, do actually make that choice to see somebody, find a therapist or a doctor who can help you in your unique situation. However, I'm all about preventative mental health. So there are things that we can get on top of to help depression. And I'm going to talk brain chemicals, Hurricane, because depression basically depletes our brain chemicals. It depletes our serotonin levels. It depletes our dopamine levels. It depletes our oxytocin levels and our beta endorphin levels. And that's why we feel really quite bad. And I got to tell you, when it gets worse, there are more brain chemicals that it depletes. So we got to look to keep these brain chemicals up. As a psychiatrist, I use medications that directly increase somebody's serotonin levels and also their noradrenaline levels. But there are things that you can do, that we can all do, to keep these brain chemicals up in our own minds. So it's a winter's day in Australia, there's the sun shining. And I've got to tell you, when I sit out in the sun there, I know that my dopamine and my serotonin levels are going up, because you feel it. You feel the pleasure of the sunlight on your skin, and that increases dopamine levels. And I kick my feet up and I feel at home in the sun. And that feeling of being at home increases my serotonin levels. So this is why in depression, one of the best things that everybody can do is exercise. Because as soon as you exercise, your body gets out there in the sunshine, in nature, the blood starts flowing through your whole body, and your body actually starts to feel at home, because your body is made to move. So your serotonin levels are going to go up. After a while, after the initial pain of doing the exercise, you start to enjoy it. You go, oh my gosh, I can do this. That brings pleasure. That brings up your dopamine levels. And if you exercise long enough, you will get an endorphin release, which is also a beautiful brain chemical that makes you feel good. Other ways you can do it, laugh. Or my favorite is always talking to people, Hurricane, because people will increase all of your blood, of your brain chemicals. The dopamine, the oxytocin, that's the feeling of love and trust, the serotonin and the endorphins. But I have to say, anybody who's really struggling with their depression out there, if you need to find somebody, you need to find somebody to help you.
Well, thank you, doctor. And you just mentioned something about, I guess, to be sociable, right? And interactive more with people, because that helps you change, the scene, and change, get a little bit out of your mood and things like that. Unfortunately, a lot of people sometimes don't like to be in the social settings, whatever the case. And actually, that may be a good reason why people get very depressed, because they just not, you and I think we talked about today's society and the young generation, where they're basically isolated in a room
Yes.
in front
Yes.
of a game. They're not even interacting with anybody.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate, but that's a trend that's coming up more. And again, in this case, the person is an early age, 27. But I think that's common now in a lot more in the millennial or even younger group. So
Hurricane, it is so common, and a lot has to do with the initial hump. I talk about an initial hump, and what I mean by that is there's a hurdle that we've got to get across to feel good. So I was talking about exercise. You've actually got to get off your butt, put your gym gear on, and get down there and do something. And that's painful. But once you get there, you feel good. People are the same. Whenever you meet somebody new, there's this initial hump, this terrible feeling of, oh, I have to get to know a new person. But once you get to know them and you start flowing, you start laughing with them. So it's looking at the long term to sort of say, I've got to get a bit of initial discomfort to get the comfort that I want. And so the person who asked the question talked about alcohol.
Mhm.
And there's a big difference between drinking to make yourself feel better or being in a social situation where you're drinking with people to loosen up a little bit. When you're by yourself, the alcohol will take away the depression feeling for a little while, but in the long term, it actually increases the depression. So to that person and anybody who is drinking to get on top of their depression, you have to try to take away the alcohol and move towards exercise. And that's hard. That's hard work. Again, we've got that initial hump, that initial effort, but the payoff is really big. But when you're with people, people are nervous. So a little bit of alcohol calms everybody down and people start laughing. So a little bit of alcohol, that's why we use it. That's why all of society uses alcohol.
Wow.
It's also harder to fight each other when you've got alcohol on board.
Yeah, you're mellow, right?
Mellow, yeah.
Yeah.
But too much and you start getting aggro, right? You know.
That's true. But again, thank you for that advice there, because I think a lot of people listening, watching this show would probably benefit from just these elements here, because I think a lot of people may experience the same thing again. These are all cases that that are very common, and
very common.
So one more question here. The question is about someone. Let me just try to read it here.
Yeah.
I feel that I need some, help. However, I am not sure if I need to see a particular doctor because of my family and the stereotype that comes with it.
Okay. So this is actually a good question, because the question relates to two things. When's the right time to see a doctor? And secondly, the family that I come from is part of a stereotype, and I don't want to be judged for that, right? So very sensitive issue. And I've got to say that doctors are trained to take care of people. We don't see the stereotype. We don't see the color of skin. We don't hear the language. We don't see the inflection, whatever those things are. We are here to help people. And every person is worthy of care. So I'm not saying that doctors are perfect, because they're not, but it's part of our training to make sure that we treat every person as a human being, because every person has a right to care and a right to live the life of who they are. So let's divide it up into two. When do I go see a doctor? When you're worried, when things are getting out of hand, when you're not feeling safe. Those three things are indications that I've got to see a doctor. Another indication is when somebody close to you says, I'm really concerned about you, I think you should see a doctor. So if somebody else has gone to that length, then it's probably time to see a doctor. And the best news that you can get to a doctor, get from a doctor, is for a doctor to say, you're basically okay. You just have to do this and you'll be okay. That's actually good news. But a doctor can make that decision if you need more help or not. So the second part of the question is getting over that idea of I'm part of a stereotype. And we are all part of only one stereotype, and that is the human race. We are all part of the human race, and we have set up this amazing society, this amazing medical system, this amazing bunch of doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists to help each other. That's what we do as human beings. We help each other through.
Well, thank you, Doctor. So I just wanted to add one thing to that question.
Yes.
Not on there, but just as listening to your response. I know I've heard this before, actually, where people are afraid, not only because of the stereotype, but also not to get medicine and get addicted to it. Because a lot of word out there is that you're going to get into this medicine and you can't get rid of it, and no one wants to use medicine. What do you say to that? Because I think that's a phobia that I think besides the stereotype and the environment, I think people are afraid just to get medicated Especially they think that this is like a methadone type or some sort of, long-term
Yes.
treatment.
Yes. Okay. So there are a few things about this. Firstly, there are some people who I find are just looking for a quick fix. So they want a medication. And often my job as a doctor and as a psychiatrist is to say, hey, there are things that you can do to take charge of the situation, some skills that you can develop that will serve you better in the long run than a medication. So particularly in the world that we're in at the moment, you'll find a lot of doctors will not go straight for the medication, that they will do what we call empower you, that there are things that you can do and give you those skills or help find the way to get those skills. On the other hand, if somebody is like really depressed, we know the best evidence is the first thing that can actually help you, and in a lot of cases, save your life, is medication. However, that's not actually your choice. We think that it's actually easy to diagnose depression in ourselves, or you look online and you fill out a questionnaire and people go, oh, you're depressed. But the thing is that, Hurricane, I have got decades of expertise, and it is still difficult to actually diagnose mental illness. It looks easy on the surface, but there is so much more that goes beyond it, which brings me to the level of trust. It's actually good practice to find a doctor that you can trust and talk about these things. And when a doctor gives their assessment, they will say what is best according to the scientific evidence for your particular situation. And for some people, that will be medication. For other people, it will not be medication. The problem becomes in you deciding what you need even before you see somebody, right? Because you could actually be severely depressed and think, I'm okay, and you can get into trouble. Or you can think that you're okay when you're actually severely depressed, and to have that professional eye look over your situation is actually always good practice.
Thank you, doctor.
That's all right, Hurricane.
So a quick another question. I have gained a lot of weight, and I cannot stand myself any longer.
Yeah.
I just don't want to hang out with anyone. I feel very, very not safe. What can I do to change my situation?
You feel very unsafe.
Mhm.
Is that what it said? It's unsafe. All right, Hurricane, I'm going to start this one with a story of somebody that I took care of many, many years ago. And this was a male in his 60s who gained so much weight that he barely wanted to leave the house. What he wanted to do was actually to be in a love relationship. But hey, he said, who would want me? And so he wouldn't even ask people out. And he got to the stage where he thought, I can only be lovable when I lose weight. And we actually worked on that, and we worked hard on that. And what we did was, because he was a human being who, okay, he was carrying weight, but he also had a good sense of humor, and he was fun to be around and had a few particular interests. We got to the stage where he felt good about himself, and he found himself a relationship before he started losing weight. So the two are actually separate things, how you feel about yourself and the weight. Now, there is a lot of stigma attached to weight because people can see your problem, and that is a big problem. However, in mental health, a lot of the stigma comes because people can't see your problem. So if somebody's depressed or anxious, they can't see that. The easiest problem to have is like a broken arm and you've got a cast on it and it's in a sling. And people go, oh my gosh, you poor person, what happened to you? And so there's a lot less stigma. So what I say to people about weight is, you are a person. If you happen to have a lot of weight is a secondary issue. That you want to work on it, that's fine, we will work on it. Weight is a very complex issue because for some people it has to do with being depressed. Mm-hmm. For some people it has to do with being anxious. For some people it has to do with actually having an eating disorder. And for the people that I see a lot of, it's got a lot to do with trauma. So there are a lot of females, for example, that feel very unsafe when they don't have weight on, because if I look too attractive, what that means is a male may come and attack me or want things from me that I can't give. So they actually feel safe when they've got weight. And for males, a lot of males feel safe when they have weight on because they're a bigger person. They're not going to get picked on. They're not going to be that little guy, all right? And all of these things have to do with psychological states that can be worked on. And it can be different for any of us, but you are separate as a person and you are worthwhile as a person, no matter what your weight status is. And I know that you can't just say that to yourself. That needs to be worked on. But that's actually the truth, Hurricane. That's the truth of the situation.
Well, you know, I hear you, and I've in the fitness world, I mean, I've seen, you know, some of it myself. Actually, hard to believe, but there was a point in my life where I got very, very heavy for my size. and it was very difficult, you know, just to accept it in a way, because that was not what I was used to.
Yeah.
And, you know, just 1 year I let it go, and I went from almost 180 to, you know, pounds to 245 pounds. And
Okay.
so for my weight and size, it was not looking good at all. and this actually happened to me in a way, but I mean, I didn't lose sleep about it, but I wasn't feeling too good about what I was seeing myself. And, you know, so it's,
Yeah.
I relate to this question literally. And so what I did, I mean, I had to take the leap of faith and just say, you know what, I had to commit to make a difference, and just, you know, eating healthier, you know, getting busier with,
Yeah.
with gym and stuff like that, and really looking, you know, to make the difference. And it took about a few years really to get back to a decent level where I was comfortable with, you know, again, that look. And so the question was not mine, but literally, I mean, it's a question that I've, you know, I've lived myself.
Yes.
and,
Yes.
and just want to add one more thing. So we're talking about someone as an adult, but when you're a child, for example, and that's the other part where I think is more problems. And I think maybe this question comes from someone that's a younger age.
Yeah.
The idea is you're in school, you got a little bit of weight, people make fun of you.
Yeah.
You know, it's depressing, it's crazy, because
It's
now you're,
hard.
yeah, and that's sad. I mean, but it is very common. And you know, I got teenagers, and they go to school, and, you know, I hear all the stories, you know, good, bad, and the ugly, right? And you know, it's a very dangerous space when you have kids, you know. And again, person doesn't feel safe. I'm not sure what that is, but, you know, maybe they're not, you know, they're thinking bad stuff. And but at the end of the day, it's just a matter of being, I guess, aware and seeking the help, right, Doc?
Yeah. Yep. It is being aware and seeking the help. And one thing that I'd like to add to that is that I ask people to accept that they have a problem, but not accept the problem. And I'll explain what I mean by that. If, let's say, you're 250 pounds, when you know you should actually be 170, you have a problem, right? But you don't accept the problem. You have to accept that you have a problem. So I am a person who is 250 pounds who wants to be 170. That is just a fact, right? You don't say, oh, I've got to accept that I am this weight. All that you need to accept is that you are a person that is this weight who would like to be a different weight. And here's the thing, you can work on that, and you may have some success in that area or not, but you can always accept yourself as a person. If you never lose that weight, you can still be who you are. You can still be loving, kind, generous, friendly, and quite frankly, if people reject you simply because of your weight, they have a problem. Now, I understand I understand it doesn't feel that way, okay, because this world lives on inclusion and exclusion. But this is why people close to you, like your parents, like your siblings, like your children, like your friends, it would be pretty sad if you actually lost a friend because of your weight. A real friend, as you know, will stand by you and won't care if you get rid of that weight or not. But if you want to get rid of that weight, they may help you. But if you say, I've got trouble, I'm not budging this weight, they'll go, you're still my friend.
You love them for what they are.
That's right. We need to be accepted for who we are, if we're successes or not. Yeah.
Again, this particular, the obesity, the weight, sometimes it can be the opposite. You can be just over skinny and you're just losing weight, and people also like, oh, you're sick or something, and then they start giving you all that feel. And then some people have that just personality where they're sometimes not a strong personality to stand and just kind of believe in themselves, and so therefore they take that vibe. And actually, I was going to lead to a question that's not from anybody, but just something I've talked to my daughter about, and which is teenagers specifically. It's a very competitive world, and in the girls' world, it's just crazy. They have to almost meet a certain look and feel to be part of the crew or part of the trend. And that affects actually, folks, because even my daughter, sometimes she has these discussions with me that, oh, Dad, I don't feel good about this because my friends, they don't like me, or whatever the case may be. Not they don't like her, but they're with her one day, they're not with her the other day.
Yeah, that's right.
It's very
very hard.
It's difficult for kids, especially parents listening to this. I mean, you probably, if you have a teenager, you're probably going through the same motion here.
Yes.
Boys are different.
Yes.
But actually not even that different, because I have 15 and 14, and my 14 was a little bit, he gained a little bit of weight in COVID. And so he was not willing to go out and hang out anymore because of his look. He wanted to trim first before he can go to school. And he did. But again, that's how the kids' mentality is operating right now, because they feel that pressure.
Yes, that's right. So we can go to the science on this, Hurricane, because we have so much evidence to show that we are all influenced by society's values. 2 studies. One study was done in Fiji when television was first introduced to this little island called Fiji. And after television was introduced there, the rates of anorexia, so females in particular who wanted to lose weight and look really skinny, really increased a lot. And why was that? Because they saw skinny females on television, and that was what was valued. And so islanders thought they had to start losing a lot of weight to be accepted. Now, the Fijian people, I love Fiji. They're some of the happiest people in the world. So they go from happy, content people to, oh, I'm not good enough. And another study that was done on another Pacific island called Tonga. It was one of the last places on Earth to get television. And the whole island was looking forward to getting television. And the king of Tonga said, here is television. And depression rates increased after television was introduced to Tonga, because people saw all the materialism, the cars, the sofas, the furniture, all the things that people had. And they started getting these questions. Hey, chief, why don't we have all this stuff? So we are heavily influenced. And the thing is, like your teenage daughter, we are now in a very commercial driven society. And it's like all of us need to know, yes, we are part of a competitive, commercial driven society, but real life is not like that. There's some garbage and pretense about the commercial driven society. Real life is with parents and friends, and having things like love, fulfillment, security, and acceptance just for who you are, not for what you look like or what you do. Out there in the world of pretense and competition, we get judged for what we do and even what we look like. But that's not really the real world. That's not really the real world. The real world is at home with people that love you. And there's this balance that we all have. And this is particularly important for parents who have teenage children, right? You are there to provide safety and security from the big bad world. And when you can provide that, the children will go out in the big bad world and they will have some successes, but they will get hurt. And then they come home and they feel accepted no matter what happens. And that's that good feeling of love. because our world is competitive does not mean that we need to accept it that way. We just need to remember where real life is.
Thank you, doctor. And you touch on good science, and also, I mean, real science, but there's that point of, you mentioned TV.
Yes.
I have actually seen this happen in not just in those islands, but even in different cultures.
Yes.
So again, I'm originally from Morocco, and between the time I left 30 years ago to now, it has changed tremendously.
Yes.
The trends are different. The
Yes.
young generations have changed tremendously because of access. Like back when I was a kid, the television system that we had was 5 hours, starts at 6 p.m., ends about 11:30 or 12, I forgot midnight. And there were very specific programming, including news and some cartoons and one movie and maybe some other type of things, but it's done. And so we were very limited to the content, and you only had, literally, it was one channel. This was in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And then the introduction of satellite and access to all thousands of channels, and they're free. So you can just free to air anything you want in the world. Switch satellite and get. Now the exposure is available to every single thing. And what I've seen in the world today, for example, almost as a pandemic, keyword for these days, the like, for example, some trends, like some people are literally starting to look the same because of the procedures that they undergo, Botox and all these things, lifters, or fillers and things like that. So it's amazing, but that's become like you said, they were skinny, so everybody wants to be skinny. And for a long time, the models, or the runway models and stuff, they have a certain profile.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you want to look cool, you want to be like, oh, I'm a model. And you have to fit that certain profile. Same guys. I mean, if you don't have six pack and, nice pecs, and chiseled stuff, it doesn't look good, because that's the trend, right? And it's still, to a degree, happening. I think there's been a change in the culture, because you see more now of different types of models, at different sizes and things like that, for different magazines, different audiences. So it's changing, but there's still that. And then you have, like, again, for example, right now in the influencers world in social media, millionaires driving, these cars and, stuff like that. So it's 1 in a million, but people are looking at that 1 in a million. They just want exactly what that person.
Yes.
So unfortunately, it is sad, but it's reality, and it is causing a lot of, I guess, psychological effect.
It is. In fact, it's causing so much, and I'm going to go to the evidence again, because the recommendation because you're basically touching upon what a destructive influence media and screens are. Okay, so the World Health Organization, this is our leading body in the world, recommends that for the first year of life for infants, no exposure to screens whatsoever, nothing. And then up to the age of 5, at the most, an hour a day, at the most. Now, that doesn't mean that after 5 years, you go to 4 hours a day. If they're saying no screens for the first year of life and less than an hour a day, that means there's a problem with it. That means we've got to limit it. And just because we have the choice of 100 channels does not mean that we have to watch 100 channels. And this is the difficulty. We now have a consumer world, and don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful world. It's a world of a whole lot of opportunity, but we can't take it too seriously. We can take it for a little bit of entertainment, but if we start taking it too seriously, it becomes a case of garbage in, garbage out. And it's very hard to discern all the garbage that we are being fed, and it's turning up in our lives. As you say, it is a very sad situation that glamorous people all start looking the same, or that everybody feels they've got to have a certain look or a certain body to be accepted. And this is not life. This is part of the pretense of consumer society. And I will go back to your family and friends that will accept you as you are. And even the world needs you. The world needs exactly who you are. And that means that there is something about you that is different from absolutely everybody. So I say to a lot of people, one of the aims of life is to be the best you that you can be, not the same as everybody else. But that's a whole new topic, Hurricane.
Well, and that's a great advice. And maybe next time we'll talk about it,
Maybe we
in
will.
detail. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So on that same aspect, so we talked about the influence in terms of the look, but I think
Yes.
there is another piece that comes with the social media and the exposure to multiple channels and the world in as a small village, basically on online.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking from to parts of the world right now, right?
Yes, we
And
are.
so one of the things, for example, I think that causes stresses on individuals all over. For example, we're in the US and Australia, pretty, stronger economy and things like that. But
Yes.
people are seeing things in parts of the world that, as you said, on those islands, they don't have the means to buy the same furniture or the same access to things that we have, technology and so on and so forth.
Yes.
And so now they want to do exactly what it's on that TV, and they can potentially go crazy to do certain things that can affect them, whether it's criminal or other. It creates another vibe, and sometimes it's they do things that they're not supposed to and break the law, whatever, because they want to attain something that is very highly achievable, but or high to achieve rather, and
Yes.
but they do whatever it takes because now they're like mesmerized with this thing. Like, I want
Yes.
this.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So what you're saying is right. And as a psychiatrist, what I encourage people to do is to use their power of choice. And it's an unfortunate narrative in science for the last couple of decades that says that we are all just chemical reactions and physical atoms, and we have no real choice. Because the science shows that 98% of us know that we make choices every day. I have chosen to come here, I choose the words, and I can choose what I do with my time every day. And so when I'm working with somebody in my office, I'm reliant on the choices they make. I may offer suggestions, but they have to make a choice. So in our society, we have to recognize that the consumer machine is there to influence our choices to do what other people want us to do. But as essence, in fact, one of the most basic things about being human is having choice, having self-responsibility, having autonomy, being the driver of your own life. And so I need to encourage people that see all this wonderful internet stuff as a series of choices, but you are going to be defined by the choices that you make. And those choices, that ability to actually make choice, is very precious. And we even know which part of the brain takes care of the choices. It's called the orbitofrontal cortex. So we all make choices, and I encourage people to make choices that are good for them.
Well, thank you, doctor. I'm looking at the time and I'm conscious about it. I know that 45 minutes went by so quick. It's not even funny. It's just like time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah, it does actually. It does.
But that's a good thing, actually. As long as it's productive and you're having fun, and I think this is productive and we're having fun, and I think it's productive for a lot of people watching or listening right now. I do want to just seal today with just a common question. Well, not common, a theme of today. And
Yes.
maybe this could be the segue to the next session. We can start the next month discussion about it further. But the impact that we see today in society with the closures, the lockdowns, and the decisions that are being made around the world in terms of COVID, vaccination versus non-vaccination, all these things, it's like almost a debate going on in the world right now. Maybe in just maybe a couple minutes, if we can just talk about that, and then hopefully we can just make it as the end of the show, and then start next time with it and just capture more, because I think this topic is going to be ongoing.
Sure, I agree.
So in your opinion, what is the level of impact that is happening right now in the psyche of people? Because it's just crazy. Everybody is in a position or another, either for or against. And, people are literally lost. They don't know what to do. Do I travel? Do not travel? My kids are going to school. How are they going to do this? Mask, no mask. We thought with the vaccine would be nothing. And now we have this. Countries are shutting down again. It is very crazy.
It is very crazy.
And the word crazy, it sounds weird on our talk.
I don't mind the word because it has these fun connotations to it. I know a lot of people see it as derogatory, but it's never meant that way. Okay, so did you want me to speak to that, Hurricane?
Briefly, I know we said we're gonna end it shortly, but if
so briefly, the crazy situation that we're in at the moment, the polarization, is actually a result of us living in a free world where we actually get to have choice. So choice in itself is a good thing. But let's take it to the pandemic. The science is actually very clear. The science is that we need to get to a herd immunity before we can open things up entirely. And the science also shows that lockdowns are very difficult on the psyche. What the science hasn't looked at is how this polarization affects the psyche. And that is actually a very difficult topic, because that, I think, is affecting people more than anything else. Because yes, lockdowns are not good for mental health. However, the epidemiologists would like us to get to the stage where we don't need to use lockdowns anymore. At the moment, however, look, so we're about to go into a lockdown here in Queensland, and the rest of the world is debating whether they should come out of lockdowns or not. Do they have enough vaccination or not? Lockdowns are initially necessary, but we are all moving towards a situation where we don't need lockdowns. And that's what's going to be best for mental health. What would be really nice if we were all able to follow the science and cooperate. But as a result of being in a free society, we freely debate these things, but it's not a 50-50 thing. The amount of anti-vaxxers, for example, is a lot smaller, but significantly large enough a group to have an impact, particularly in the United States. But the science, the word science means knowledge in the sense of what we can all agree on is real. So the way forward in a lot of issues, not just in the pandemic, is to trust the science to get us through this very difficult time. And then we can go back to the free and open debates that we're having at the moment. But science is actually there to help us get through and survive together. And I hope that's what we do, Hurricane. Thank you for our discussions, Hurricane. And I want to thank your listeners for bringing in some questions too. And yeah, so thanks to everybody out there. We're here to answer your mental health questions and to keep your mental health on the balance, keep you enjoying life. But life is also going to be a bit of a struggle. It's a balance between fun and struggle. So if we can get through to that together, we're doing pretty well.
Well, thank you, Doctor. And so, folks, stay tuned for our next, I guess, session. Q&As will be in the end of August, I believe. And so we'll confirm that, and we'll share that, post with everybody. So look forward to that next one. Dr. Heim, thank you for being with us. And, as always, it's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me, Hurricane.
You have a great morning.
And you have a great night.
Thank you, sir. And we'll talk soon. Ciao, ciao.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.